It's about as cold in Minnesota as it is on Mars. But no worries, Twins fans, because it's like 75 or 80 degrees in Fort Myers, where the Twins have had their first full workout of spring training. You want to know all about it? All you need to do is stay in your toasty homes and get Locked On Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to Locked On Twins, your daily go-to source for the top Minnesota Twins insight, discourse, and analysis. Personally, it's my favorite show of the Locked On Podcast Network, which, by the way, brings you your team every day. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe where applicable. I'm Dave Brown, an MLB writer since A.J. Pierzynski was a snot-nosed rookie. I'm also a BBWAA member and a Hall of Fame voter. Across the Great Plains of cyberspace is Brandon Warren, a Twins writer who was a Twins fan before that, and today is the site expert at Puckett's Pond, a blog about the Twins. You should check out Brandon's written work and mine over at Puckett's Pond to supplement your Locked On Twins coverage. Today's podcast is full as in full squad workout. The Twins just had their first get-together of the Grapefruit League season, and everyone was there, even Carlos Correa, but not Carlos Santana because he's with the Guardians again. So, Brandon, what's going to be on the show today? We're going to talk about Rocco's change in, I don't know if it's philosophy or method or whatever, how he's going to alter how he and the coaching staff go about doing things, because last year, if you recall, didn't end very well. And it's like, well, why run it back? We're going to run it back with most of the same players. Thank you, somebody. But we're not going to do the same things as far as coaching, because what could it hurt? And besides, maybe I should change some things before somebody changes me. So there's that. And there's new hitting coaches with new philosophies and new focuses. We'll talk about that. And there's a couple other things I have here, but I lost my place. Oh, yeah. Prospect Emmanuel Rodriguez is out with an ankle sprain already. Oh, boy. Yeah. And MLB TV and Twins TV announce the broadcast schedule for spring. So where and when will you be able to get the Twins from the Grapefruit League? We'll look into that a little bit too. So we don't have a title sponsor today. So I just want to know what you think about where Rocco should start as far as all the players are all together. Is the first thing he should do talk about what happened at the end of last year, or should we forget about that? What would you do if you were Rocco?
Well, I think what's interesting, and it's something I jotted down while you were talking because I hadn't really thought of it this way yet, was not many managers are afforded the opportunity to make changes like this. A lot of times they just get fired. I mean, teams are very impatient with their leadership. And I mean, even this front office group, or at least the Falvey-led leadership, after one iffy year with Paul Molitor, moved on because it wasn't their guy. So I think it's interesting to see that Rocco wants to turn over a new leaf in some regards. But at the same time, too, though, I think deviating from like data that tells you to do something and it doesn't work, it doesn't mean that the data was wrong. It just means that every single decision has a winner and a loser. Somebody may pick the right thing to do, and the other guy on the other side of that exchange does their part better. If you execute a really good fastball just up and over the strike zone with 2 strikes, you could expect a strikeout quite often. But every now and then, a guy's going to tomahawk the ball up and hit it out of the park. And so, I don't want to deviate from the decisions made by data just because they didn't pan out the way you would have hoped. And I don't think they're going to do that. But I think that's what fans are expecting, is like a total deviation from we're not going to bunt that much, and we're not going to do this that much, and we're not going to do that much. I think any sort of huge change, probably not super likely.
Yeah, even beyond the process, I was thinking about what we know about how Rocco manages the players. And there's only so much that we do know as observers, as outsiders. Like even the people who, Bobby Nightingale and Betsy Helfand and Dan and Audra, there's only so much that they know. They're not they're with the team every day, most days. But still, there's only so much we know about how Rocco interacts with the players. I definitely have my ideas and suspicions. He seems like what is known as a player's manager, and not that much of a taskmaster or a jerk, or a tough love kind of guy. I don't know if that is how accurate that is or what, but I did get the feeling last year when we would see Rocco get upset at things that were happening on the field, and people are like, "Why isn't Rocco kicking over, tables?" And I think the answer to questions like that is because it's not really in his personality, and
it'd be performative, and guys would see through that.
They'd see
the same thing with Joe Mauer. Yeah, if Joe Mauer started swearing, everybody'd be like, "What the heck is this guy doing?" And everybody wanted Joe Mauer to show some fire, show a little fire. Everything has its time, and the same thing is true when you want a player's manager. If it doesn't work, you want a hard ass. You have a hard ass and things go sour. You want someone who's a little easier on the players. Like, basically, it's just a place for people to put what they think the problem is on. As far as they're losing, so this must be wrong. The manager
get a confirmation bias about it.
The manager must be the opposite of what this team needs, or you tried to steal second base and got thrown out. The opposite of that would have been the correct decision. And sometimes that's true, sometimes it's not. But we do live in a very left or right, black or white, yes or no universe. And applying that to baseball leads to a lot of logical fallacies that just drive me up a wall, if I'm frankly as honest as I can be.
Well, hopefully you're seatbelted for driving up the wall, because otherwise you're going to fall out of your car. But on that note, and all of that said, I do think there is a real pivot for Rocco to make that is a little bit more to all right, guys, we thought we were focused before, but now we're going to just change up things a little bit. And I think that is reflected in a few stories that we've seen so far about how they're going about their business in Fort Myers. It's going to be a little bit more of a focus on today, and not lamenting what happened yesterday, but trying to change it just for change's sake, maybe. And maybe that isn't a bad thing. You mentioned it earlier too. It's not often that a manager gets an opportunity to make some changes like this.
At least not with the same team.
No, exactly. There's a situation, if things don't go well for the Twins this year, if they're under 500 in June or July, I wouldn't be, and they have new ownership, I wouldn't be surprised if they made a change at manager. I'm not saying like Rocco is definitely a half step away, but if things go south again, I would not be shocked for a second if they would make a change. And I think that is going into his thinking too. It's not so much a preservation, a self-preservation or a job preservation, but it is the recognition or the reckoning that he has a chance here to do some tweaks, and it's still a good situation, and he can be the guy that leads the team to success in the second half. I think he realizes this, and I think that's a really real thing with what's going on with the Twins. So
it typifies the unfairness of the role, though, because he had a talented team that got hurt last year, and if they don't live up to expectations this year, the reasons are probably less likely to be about him than they are about X, Y, and Z. But that the manager is the fall guy, and to some extent, yeah, Rocco has lasted longer than a lot of managers would in other circumstances. Because the Twins have had just enough seasons where it's like, what am I missing here? Why isn't this working? And it's a lot of different reasons: injuries, pinch hitters going 0 for 30, basically going what felt like hitless with the bases loaded for entire seasons. Like, it's all part of the sequencing of baseball and how baseball works. But it feels as though the Twins leave a lot of meat on the bone, where you're kind of like, okay, how does this keep happening? And what is the common thread here? The players have changed, but the front office is still there. The manager's still there. And again, that's probably misplaced angst. It's probably misplaced, problem solving. But at the end of the day, it's a results business. And I think that's why I think Rocco, to further your point, Rocco is as likely to win AL Manager of the Year as he is to be not managing the Twins when we convene after game 162.
Yeah, I think that's probably realistic. Although, or I would say he's as likely to be a strong candidate for that because
Sure.
those awards tend to go to very specific cases where somebody comes out of nowhere and
if the White Sox
manages a
win
2 minutes
60
left.
games this year, it's going to be Will Venable. But
I saw a poll by a FanGraphs person today, by the way, that, hey, who do you think is going to win the AL Central? And there were 4 choices, and there are 5 teams in the AL Central, and guess who was not on the list? So but it's Elon's Twitter, so this isn't necessarily his fault. But there's only 4 choices you can make, and the White Sox are not going to be one. But if that happened, Will Venable, if the White Sox did win, I would say they'd have to win like 75 games probably, and then he might get the award. But so we're going to take our first break, and we're going to talk more about what Rocco's doing, what the new hitting coaches are doing to just to get off to a different start in 2025.
In sports, having a winning strategy is everything. It's how the best teams make it to the Super Bowl, the World Series. It's how individuals and teams make it to the Olympics. We're a year out from the next Olympics. I've been seeing a lot of that on the news. But if you want to be of that ilk, the same is true for life. Having a strategy like life insurance from SelectQuote can protect your financial legacy and keep your family's future secure. SelectQuote makes it easy to find the perfect life insurance policy. As one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, they've helped over 2 million customers find $700 billion in coverage since 1985. And what sets SelectQuote apart is their personal touch. Unlike other brokers that offer one-size-fits-all policies, their licensed agents tailor coverage to fit your unique needs. So if you're in good health, you might even qualify for same-day coverage for up to $5 million with no medical exam required. And it's more affordable than you'd think. You can get up to $1 million in coverage, $1 million for as little as $20 a month. So get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/lockedon. Go to selectquote.com/lockedon today to get started. That's right. That's selectquote.com/lockedon. SelectQuote. They shop, you save.
That's right, Brandon. That's Brandon Warren, and I'm Dave Brown, and this is Locked On Twins, and we're talking about the
quickly. Yeah. Sorry. Do you remember the sweatshirts that the players wore that said "Whole Squad Ready" a few years ago at spring training?
Was that a Twins thing or a league?
No,
thing?
I think it was everybody. Like it was like 4 years ago, 5 years ago. You have like the postseason, or you have the whatever slogans that they wear and fans buy them or whatever. I always was like, you know what though? They should have one set for when half the guys stay back and play in Fort Myers, and half of them go to Sarasota that say "Split Squad Ready" because
Split Squad.
Whole Squad Ready it's not really apt description. So Split Squad Ready would be, it's more revenue for selling more sweaters, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Has that been percolating in your brain for 4 years since you saw it, or whenever it was?
Yep.
That's amazing.
It might have even been 2019. I went down and covered spring training. It's the only time I've ever done it as a media member. I went down to the Cactus League in like 2015, but it might even have been in my brain for that long, 6 years.
Well, I'm glad that it finally. I like it. It's a great pun. So I think the players would appreciate it too. We are talking about the first full squad day for the Twins in spring training. They had it on Monday, and a few of the alterations that Rocco and the staff want to make. There's a new hitting staff, and one thing in the process that Rocco said that he wanted to do. Read about this in Betsy Helfand's Pioneer Press story. Players are going to get more at bats in games. Vets will play earlier in camp and take a few more road trip opportunities from remote Fort Myers. Fort Myers is like the southernmost. I don't know if it's not south of Miami,
right?
But incoming message.
I looked it up. It was 2019 for the Whole Squad Ready. Like that's been rattling in my brain for a full 6 years.
I thought you were telling me that Miguel Cabrera was reporting for duty on the Tigers. It's like that's more of a White Sox move to bring back a retired guy to play.
Is he related to Manny Machado?
Not that I know of.
Can he play right field?
Definitely
that doesn't
not.
matter. That doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
No.
You're hired. So it's going to be a little bit of a different process for the Carlos Correas and Buxtons of the world. They're going to go and get a few more road games. Baldelli says, I think it puts a little bit different stress on their body in a positive way than going to a backfield to work out. This is part of a suggestion made by Carlos Correa, assistant coach Carlos Correa. So the Twins are going to get a little more game ready for the beginning of the season. And it's that backfield thing versus going to a game also is reflected in how the hitting coaches want to change things, as far as Matt Borg-Schulte coming in and being the new hitting coach. From Bobby Nightingale's story in the Star Tribune, the first 2 rounds of batting practice were focused on hitting the ball in the opposite field gap. That's going to get some people excited. The third round was line drives up the middle. What?
Sorry to interrupt. That's not uncommon. People won't know that, but that's not uncommon at all. It's very common to do move them up, move them over, move them in. And so you do moving guys. Like if you're a left-handed hitter, you're pulling the ball on the ground to the right. Again, I'm not saying it's
right
what people are going to like to hear, but it's a thing. Like, this is not the Twins being unusual. I just want to make sure to get that out there.
Well, they at least want to get it in their hitters' minds that they want to improve their situational hitting, because while the Twins were, 2 years ago, they won the division, made the playoffs. Last year, they were top 10, I think 10th in runs scored, but they still had a bunch of games where they didn't score any runs. There were 50 games last year where they scored 2 runs or fewer. So they want more consistency there. So they want to tighten up how they practice their hitting. There's going to be less cage work and more on-field batting practices. And this isn't going to just be something that's spring training. We're talking about once the season starts. A lot of guys, like Shohei Ohtani is famous, and it works for him, for not taking batting practice in front of everybody. He likes to do his work in the cage. The Twins, don't have 10 Shohei Ohtanis. So they're going to want to get guys out, not erasing the work in the cage, not doing any cage work, but they like the idea of Borg-Schulte likes the idea of hitters being able to see the flight of the ball, being on the field, being in conditions that mirror game performance. When you're in a dark tunnel, it's not. I guess it's kind of like a night game, but it's not really the same thing. Hitters can take advantage of reads like runners and fielders do on defense and on the bases. So that's, as far as the process goes, that's one of the things that the new hitting staff is going to change. So I think, and he's a guy that worked with a lot of these players before, Royce Lewis and Jeffers and Miranda and Larnach at one time down in Fort Myers, and Miranda again later on. But it's just a reminder that, last year wasn't good enough. And I think but doing it in a way that focuses on today, as Rocco says. So I think that is a very healthy attitude and process to have as far as how things change in 2025.
I think what you said about 50 games with 2 runs or fewer feeds into my point of sequencing, just how their runs were distributed was so inefficient. And again, the name of the game in everybody's mind is consistency. Well, no pitcher that has a 3 ERA pitches 9 innings every time and gives up 3 runs every time. Everyone says consistency when they usually mean play good on a regular basis.
Right.
We kind of conflate the two. But the way that, they would have stretches where their pitching staff would be solid and give up 3 runs and they'd only score 2, or 5 and 3, 5 and 4. It just felt as though every time they had a chance to take advantage of a pretty good pitching performance that maybe not super elite, or even an elite one, they'd score 1 run when Bailey Over gives up 2. I can't prove that the Twins are more susceptible to that, but the frustration level that I felt watching them when they would do that felt higher than it had in a lot of other seasons. I don't know if it was because I looked at this roster and I thought this team should be so much better than this down the stretch. I don't know where all this kind of the swelling of it came up, but hearing how the runs were distributed is, I think, a big part of it. I mean, if you were to look at what they were in all other games, the other 110 or whatever, I'm sure they're one of the big league's best teams in those other games. And again, maybe that's a little bit of selection bias, but it was really pretty much as simple as scoring 3-4 runs, and the Twins were going to be in a good position to win most nights, and they just couldn't do that. And what's frustrating from a what is it? If you're looking at something from a macro, from a macro level, you look at that offense and you're like, they should be good enough to score 3 or 4 runs a night and put themselves in position to win. But there was just too many times where they'd score 2, 1, 3, and then every now and then they'd blow up for 8, 9, 7 to kind of mess up that average. So I don't know. I think the offense is capable of so much more, but I think that it's that distribution or lack thereof of runs in those games that was so frustrating to watch from a fan standpoint and from an analysis standpoint, and even from, I'm sure, an organizational standpoint. It just felt like they were never quite where they needed to be to get over that hump.
Yeah, before everything went to hell last year, it seemed keeping in mind that there were injuries to key players of the offense. It did seem like they were not making the most of what they had. I remember they scored a lot of runs late in a lot of games, and when they didn't do that, it didn't seem like they had scored runs earlier, And so it was like, well, if the Twins aren't going to rally today, it's never going to happen. So because it hasn't happened already in the game. So I wanted to address one more thing about hitting in the cage more versus going on the field and doing it. Ryan Jeffers said this: when you do hit on the field, there's a little bit more of an emphasis on moving the ball around the field, not just hitting homers to the pull side, Jeffers said. I think this is something that fans should realize, and players too sometimes. Homers are great. Homers get you paid. A lot of big games are won by homers, but there are going to be a lot of games where a single through the 4-hole is going to score a run when it matters. So it might seem to some people out there like, yeah, why didn't you think of that already? Or why is it taking this? Sometimes you get locked into a way of doing things and you get single-minded or narrow-minded, or you're focused tunnel vision, it's called, where, you kind of forget those basic things. I mean, that's why even great hitters go through slumps, because stuff like that happens. So I think it's good that Bork Schulte is kind of changing the focus and changing the, starting with the setting of why. It just makes a lot of sense to me. If you're going to change something, get outside a little bit more. Hey, you kids, get outside and hit the ball. So I like where that's going. And Royce Lewis added, it seems like the hitting coaches are attacking our weaknesses. That's maybe a little bit of a platitude and an obvious one, but that's fine. That's what we want. So that's what's going on as far as that stuff, changes from camp. There are a couple other bits of news going on. MLB.TV and Twins TV announced that there's going to be, I think the Twins are going to have 5 games on Twins TV and another 12 that fans can access via MLB.TV to watch them during spring training. So there'll be 17 opportunities. There's usually about, I should know this, but there's usually about 30 games. So maybe about half the schedule is going to be something that you can see. It's not just going to be radio. Now, I like to think that every game should be on, at least put one of those Dan Hayes closed circuit first base drill cameras up there so we can see every game. But 17 games, people will get a chance to watch the Twins in spring training and test out Twins TV to see how it goes. So that's better than nothing, I guess.
Well, never let good be the enemy of perfect. It's better than watching 5 games every spring. If you can't watch all 30, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. And so, no, I think it'll be nice. And the nice thing too with Twins.tv in spring training is you'll get to watch some of these prospects like Emmanuel Rodriguez, and then Twins.tv will have some of those cut-ins to those games as well. And so like just a better awareness of the organization for fans, I think could be a really interesting secondary storyline to watch. Fans getting a little more excited for prospects to come up than they already are.
One prospect who's going to be late is Emmanuel Rodriguez. He rolled his left ankle a week ago and is out for 2 weeks. So we spent all this time in the last few shows talking about how, knock on wood, the Twins are going to be healthy this year. And, this isn't a Correa or a Buxton type situation, but it'll it was a little deflating. I'll be honest to say that Rodriguez got hurt. He was fielding a ball in the outfield on February 10th, and he rolled his ankle. Imaging test came back negative, but it's going to delay his, reinsertion into activity. So I'm not making too big a deal out of it, but on the inside, maybe I am.
Well, in true true Minnesotan fashion, I'll just say it could be worse. Could be Giancarlo Stanton, who already has crazy pain in both of his elbows. Like,
what does this guy do over the winter? What happened? What was he like shooting nonstop 3-pointers? Why are both of his elbows hurt?
Yeah, right. He's been working on his 3-pointer from the elbow, I guess, or something. I don't know, but
that's too close.
Yeah, right. Very, very good. We have all these caveats of like, this team is going to do this if healthy. And one, really shouldn't ever have to say it because it's assumed, but also two, it's never going to be true. Like, every team deals with something, whether it's, that or the Guardians are going to be without David Fry for a big chunk of the start of the season. And nobody's ever going to be if healthy. And yet we still spend all our time arguing online about which team is better if healthy. Well, doesn't matter. And so I'm trying to beat that out of my lexicon, and slowly but surely I think it's happening. But if you see me doing it, make sure you call me on it.
Your lexicon, when is St. Patrick's Day, by the way? Is it soon?
About a month, probably.
Okay. So don't beat your lexicon until
Shamrock Shake is back already. So those are back. Not my style anymore, but back in the day, those were one of my favorites.
Well, it's definitely. I would just have a vanilla shake. I mean, if I don't know, adding that little mint doesn't do anything for me. But
right.
What else is going on in camp? A lot of old guys are there, Hall of Famer old guys. I mean that with reverence. Rod Carew is a guest instructor. The Twins put up a nice video of Hank Conger basically reading Rod's resume. 18 straight All-Star games, which is insane. Didn't have a high school baseball team.
He said something in there wrong, though, like that bothered me.
Yeah.
He mispronounced.
Yeah, Frank Viola,
and which is funny because I know I keep banging the drum on this, but I'm listening to $sign on the Muscle, and they're talking about Frank Viola outdueling Ron Darling in a game back in like 1980 or 81, in college, and the narrator doesn't know.
Johns.
Well, so the narrator is saying Viola, and he's saying he's had a couple other names wrong, and so to hear Conger do that, or Conger, and
did you do that on purpose?
Yeah.
Okay.
Conjure up an image of him mispronouncing Viola, but anyway, it was the parallelism to me was kind of funny, but no, I don't know. I mean, do they bring more legends in than other teams do? Bert Blyleven was pictured next to him. Tony Oliva has been a mainstay not only at spring training, but even
Morneau and Kadire are there.
Morneau, Kadire, LaTroy Hawkins is there a lot. Torrey Hunter will swing by from time to time. Not so much now, but they do have, though, a lot of legends around. Carmen Killebrew used to be a mainstay. Tom Kelly used to be. Like, do you think they're more than the average team in that regard?
I don't know. I would say that there are probably teams out there that are like the Twins in that they do lean on the older guys. The Mets come to mind for some reason lots of times. And although John Heyman's been going on and on about how Tony Orlando has been in Mets camp, not as an instructor, but the old singer, Tie a Yellow Ribbon. But the Mets always bring their old guys back. I think maybe we just notice it some places more than others. I would say, without putting scientific whatever on it, that the Twins are in the 90th percentile as far as
that'd be my guess,
bringing their older guys back. So, but Carew's there, so maybe there's something that he's kind of like proto Luis Arraez as far as what kind of hitter. I think that all the Twins hitters could use a little bit of Carew, a little bit of Arraez in their approaches from time to time. Ryan Jeffers was right. Home runs get you paid, but every once in a while, do a Rod Carew, do a Luis Arraez, and get on base in that way. So,
there was some parallel structure there too. Adam Sandler doing his SNL 50th anniversary song, and he's famous for the Hanukkah song with Rod Carew. And so Rod Carew was in the news for both of those things because people were reminiscing of the old times. Everybody loves the old times. So that was another fun little parallel reference where Rod Carew comes up on Saturday Night Live every now and then.
is Rod Carew, did Rod Carew not convert to Judaism, or is he not Jewish? It's one of those two things.
I believe he did convert, actually.
No, that definitely turned out to be not true.
Okay.
And
maybe it just rhymed then. I thought it was true, but now I'm questioning everything.
I didn't really prepare for that. I didn't think of it. I should have. As soon as I see Rod Carew, I think of the Hanukkah song too.
Yeah.
So, but maybe on future shows we'll look into Rod Carew's Judaism. But anyway, that's going to wrap up this episode of Locked On Twins. For Brandon Warren, this is Dave Brown, wishing you all a very pleasant good evening, saying there's still lots of spring training to go, and we'll cover it. But until then, we will Alexei Casilla tomorrow night. Hall of Famer Rod Carew.
He converted.